this is really a bit of a hole in music history. We know about the multi-choir tradition of Venice in the late 16th and early 17th century. We know about the Strigio 40-part mass from 1566. But this Roman school, these are real singers' masses for 16 voices. And we're hoping to bring him out of the shadows, because this seems to me like very, very high quality music. Benevoli was a fixer. He was a maestro of the Cappella Giulia, but he was also a fixer of extra singers for big ornate events. And whereas by the beginning of the 17th century it was normal to have on feast days a mass for 3 choirs, he was going to outdo that and start a fashion for writing for 4 choirs. The performance practice suggests that these were 1 or 2 to a voice events, and Benevoli would book the extra singers they needed, perhaps with a little bit of instrumental doubling, a bass violin or a trombone on the bottom lines and a violin cornet recorder on the top.
It's taking me a while to work out where to put myself, because as you say, Matt's singing fantastically on my left and he makes such a free sound always. And then my instrument is a recorder who is playing beautifully, but it's a very, very straight, very direct sound, and so I think in a way that makes me a bit more like a castrato actually, because I'm trying to join her sound world a bit, which automatically makes me weedier than the lower voices.
That's a particular skill, isn't it? And I don't think it's something they would have worried about in the 17th century, because frankly, to get through this piece at all on the amount of rehearsal time they didn't have, when you're sitting there just with your own part written out by hand, counting rests, unable really to hear the other choirs at all. So I suppose just different skills, aren't they?
What I found surprising rehearsing it was that in a lot of this polychoral music, it can be quite sort of dense and monolithic, but even when all 4 choirs are singing, there's still quite a lot of detail and agility to the writing. It's not just kind of a great big sweep of 16 voices.
Yeah, you get writing that you would never normally see in pieces of this size for bass parts, for example.
You get bass suspension.
We've got some pretty lush ones between
We've
us.
got some great ones. Got some great ones with David across the room. It's unbelievable.
Our series begins with this mass based on the very famous motet by Palestrina, Tu es Petrus, St. Peter, patron saint of Rome, and Palestrina practically the patron saint of polyphony, who had such a reputation that this phrase stile antico, the old style, was used for composers still writing in the Palestrina style sometime later. And that is what Benevoli does up to a point. But he's infected by new styles of composing around this time, so it gets a little bit exciting. And although the style is old style, it's like having a sort of weak curry, a sort of biryani most of the time. Just occasionally, you'll get a mouthful of madras. Benevoli was an exact contemporary with the rather better known Carissimi, known for his oratorios such as Jefte. They were born in the same year, working in Rome at the same time, also with Bonifazio Graziani, a composer not so far to have one to have troubled the recording catalogues very much. And his Opus 1 here, a book of motets, became really quite well known, especially in Northern Europe.
So I'm involved with the Graziani motets, and we've been struck by how vivid the texts are. As singers, we always start with the text, and they've provided us great opportunities to express and find different vocal colours, so to communicate the text as directly as possible. Of course, Robert's always up for that.
I think I've learnt so much from him about the importance of text. It's all text-driven, and if it's text-led, then everything else sorts itself out to an extent, and he makes it so fun. It's a huge pleasure.
Incredible lineup of musicians downstairs, singers that I've worked with for 20, even 30 years in some cases, but also some younger ones, ex-students from my masters at the University of York in solo voice ensemble singing, 6 of them in the group of 16 today. And it's interesting the dynamic they bring to the group. But also the City Music, long-term collaborators, they were there in the Striggio recording, also the 1612 Italian Vespers, Bill Lyons' group, and a lovely sensitivity from them to play like singers. That is their job, to phrase with the singer's word stress.
So with all combined, and with all the 16 voices working together at the same time, you get these different layers of instrumental colour that just complement the voices. And it was very much more common practice at the time than we think. We're used to that very conventional, just voices only sound of music from the 16th and 17th centuries. But the more we found out about it, the more convention seems to be that instruments were brought in. We know that in Venice, of course, there were a huge amount of instrumental contribution, and also, it seems, in Rome as well.
This is good, this is funky.